Here's a look at a recap of your markets on this Wednesday, the 29th day of October. Despite some good news in the grain markets, very little movement today. Very likely that speculation earlier in the week about the possibility of today's news was already figured into the market. And of course, that news today on the grain side came with finally selling some beans to China. Although it took a full 10 months this calendar year, there has been some verified loads sold to China now, albeit a very minimal amount, but the psychology of that happening quite big for the grain markets. In the cattle markets today, finally hit the brakes on the free fall, turned around and gained a little bit of ground back, and that was a result of news coming out of Mexico that although there is significant ground being made on controlling screwworm, at the time being, there is no timeline whatsoever established for the reopening of the Mexican border for cattle to come into the U.S. Auction barns, pretty quiet around the state today with what happened earlier in the week. Many producers choosing not to market this week, and barns, some of them actually encouraging producers to hold out a little while if they were able to as well. Movement was fairly light around, with some of the barns just staying dark today. Springfield Livestock Marketing Center, they had 701 head. Of course, like all the barns anywhere this week, didn't matter where you were, all the barns that did have sales and had a few cattle show up significantly lower, and Springfield was no exception. Steers called $25 to $40 lower, heifers $20 to $30 lower. The steers, medium and large ones, 4 to 5 weights at $412 to $435, 5 to 6 weights, $385 to $400, some unweaned at $375 to $380, some 6 to 7 weights, $358 to $371, package 817-pound steers at $320. Feeder heifers, a few 4 to 5 weights at $380 to $412, a few 5 to 6 weights with some of these unweaned, $362 to $380, a few 6 to 7 weights at $340 to $342. Taking a look at those livestock futures today. Live cattle for October up $3.90 at $231.40. December up $4.32 at $230.90. February $229.45 up $5.35. Feeder cattle for October $347.87 up $377. November up $8.67 at $342.07. January up $9.15 at $334.02. Lean hogs for December down a nickel, 80.77. February, 12 cents lower, 82.32. April down 32 at 86.55. Box beef cutout values for the day, higher. Choice up $1.73 at $381.38. Select up $1.79 at $361.79. Those values based on 137 loads of cuts, trimmings, and grinds. Choice select spread at $19.59. Really nothing more as far as feedlot trade today. Basically at the same place we were when we started the day. 34,800 head. Texas still at 0. Kansas still at 146 head. Iowa 12,028. Nebraska 20,360. Live sales in the north at 230. Dress sales in the north from 355 to mostly 358 to 360. Turning our attention to the grain markets at the elevators around the state today, corn was up 2 to 4. Beans 2 to 7 higher, wheat up 3. Corn in St. Louis 454, Kansas City 424. Beans in St. Louis 1102. Kansas City 1035 to 1045. Wheat bids in St. Louis 507 to 520. Kansas City at 507. On the Board of Trade, corn contracts. December closed up 434. March 446 and 3/4 up 3/4. May unchanged at 455. Now all the rest of the contracts into summer of next year, fractionally to a penny and a half or so lower. November beans were up 2 at 10.80 1/4. The rest of contracts fractionally 2 cents lower further out into next summer. January down 3/4 cent, 10.94 1/2. March beans at 11.05 1/4, down 1 1/2. Wheat contracts, December up 3 1/4, 5.32 1/4. March up to 547 and 3/4. May unchanged, 557 and a half, and then the rest of contracts further into next year's crop harvest year, 2 to 3 and 3/4 lower. Soybean meal for December, 308.70 a ton, up $2.20. Soybean oil for December down 10 cents a hundredweight at 50.16. With the Missouri Department of Agriculture, that's a recap of your markets for Wednesday. This is Tony Hancock.